Mac Power Users, episode 496, Hacking the Keyboard with Brett Terpstra. Hello, everybody. This is David Sparks, the Mac Power Users. Stephen couldn't make it this week, but he'll be back next week. But in Stephen's absence, we do have an old friend of the show. Welcome back, Brett Terpstra.
Hey, nice to be here.
The only guest that has a drinking game based on him in Mac Power Users lore.
And yet, ironically, has quit drinking.
Well, yeah, I barely drink too. So there you go. You can have a seltzer water. Just take a hit. Just go crazy. Get the bubbles.
Yeah.
Put a little lime in there. Go nuts.
I do drink a lot of LaCroix these days.
Now, do you put lime in or lemon?
A lemon, I prefer to lime.
When I quit my job, the next day, I got kidney stones. It was great.
Ouch.
It was an awesome transition. And the urologist told me, drink water with lime or lemon in it every day. And I take that seriously. So
yeah,
that's all I'm going to say.
Stick to that.
Well, we got to spend some time together a few weeks ago at MacStock. It was great seeing you again. As always, Mr. Terpstra is up to his eyeballs in cool stuff on his Mac. Just looking at the outline today, we got a new version of nvUltra, very imminent. Brett's been doing some cool brainstorming stuff where you've got home screen talk. We got a lot to talk about today. But first, I just want to check in with you, Brett. We haven't talked for a while. What are you using these days for your gear?
Well, I have the exact same machine I've had the last 6 times we've talked.
Okay, well then.
It's a 2014 MacBook Pro 15-inch Retina. It is on its last legs right now. Around the time of MacStock, the battery had started expanding inside of it and nearly broke the trackpad, but I yanked it out.
Yeah.
My computer, did you know that if you run one of these MacBook Pros without a battery, it clocks the CPU down to 1 gigahertz?
I did not know that.
I did not know that either. So I had planned to just run it off of wall power for the remainder of its life. But running a 1 gigahertz machine is not feasible.
I wonder why that is. I would seem like if it has juice.
When you run it off of wall power, it's supplementing with the battery. So if your battery's at 0 and you plug it into the wall, it's going to run sluggishly until it has enough capacity in the battery to supplement the energy draw. With no battery, it assumes it's going to be underpowered and just automatically clocks down.
I had no idea that you had to have a battery in it when you plug it into a wall to get full power.
The things you learn when you rip the battery out of your laptop.
Yeah, and that you've got the one where you had to unscrew the base, right, to get the battery out. Yeah. So what, did you just order a battery and put it in?
I picked up a third-party battery from, I think it was Newegg or Otherworld Computing.
Yeah.
OWC, yeah.
Yeah.
I don't remember which one now, but it was kind of cool. Like, it didn't come with the screws I thought I needed because I didn't want to sort through all the screws I'd taken out to get the other battery out.
Yeah.
But it wedges in and doesn't need any screws. There's 2 screws total, whereas to take the old one out, there's about 8 screws. So,
well, I think a lot of people don't realize that with an aging laptop, the battery is the first thing to go, and
it always will.
And it's really not that expensive or that difficult of a repair to replace the battery. Like,
I will say though, if you do the repair correctly, you are expected to take out all of the components and then the logic board so that you can get to the battery without risking damaging it.
Oh my goodness.
I did not bother to read the instructions. I did it the dangerous way. Fortunately, all worked out for me. But
so if you go to OWC, they usually have a video or very good instructions as to how to do it.
Yeah.
The other way you could do it is you can take it in an Apple store, and if you write a check, they'll do it for you. And probably pay a little more, but if you don't feel comfortable, digging into your machine. And honestly, with a laptop, if you're removing the logic board, I don't feel comfortable doing that. I feel like I don't do that enough to be comfortable knowing that I would get it back right. And those cables, everything has to be perfect in those laptops. They're so tight inside there. But either way, my point is, if you've got an older laptop, think about just replacing the battery in it, because you'll be surprised how much life that puts back into the machine. And I didn't realize that the machine, even when plugged in, was using the battery. So that kind of explains one of the reasons why it feels snappier after you upgrade the battery.
Yeah.
So did it feel better? I mean, is it running better now that you put the battery in?
It's back to running the way it did a year ago.
Yeah.
The battery had already, even before the service battery thing came up,
yeah,
it was starting to, it would have a charge for about 20 minutes. So I should have replaced it a long time ago.
Yeah. It's something that's easy to put off because it still works, right? I mean, even though it's failing.
Yeah.
All right. So you got the new battery, and I guess you got the 2014, so you don't have any keyboard issues. You're kind of good, man.
If I could make this machine last forever, I probably would, but the keyboard is starting to wear out. Not in any of the butterfly keyboard ways, but my left command key is starting to miss.
Yeah.
So like every fourth time I go to hit like command tab, I'm just hitting tab. That's annoying. That's an important key.
I bought with the 12.9 inch iPad Pro, I bought the Apple cover case.
Yeah.
And now the space bar is getting wonky on me. I don't know,
So like the smart keyboard?
Yeah. I mean, the space bar. I mean, like you never need that.
I can think of a few uses, but.
And it just stops working enough to be like it's not like it doesn't work at all. It's just like, when I look at my document later, I'll see, oh, look at that. There's a couple words stuck together. I don't know. I think I've got this bridge keyboard. I think I'm just going to start using it full time and not worry about it. But yeah, that's, I mean, is the 2014 machine too slow for you at this point?
No, if I knew it was going to not fail me and leave me with no computer,
yeah,
I would be satisfied with it. While I am always open to a faster computer, it's not slow enough to like drive me nuts every day.
Yeah, I feel like the order of failure for people is number one, battery, number two, space. Because as you get an aging laptop, you just get a lot of bloat on the hard drive, and with these SSDs, there's just not a lot of room to play.
Have you gotten one of these Samsung T5s, external SSDs?
Yes,
that thing runs almost. Like once you consider bottlenecks, it runs as fast as my internal SSD. Yeah. So I've been offloading a lot of stuff onto external SSD drives. I can even boot like Catalina for testing. I can boot off of one of those external SSDs.
Yeah.
And it feels like running my regular machine.
I got a small one because I wanted to test out with iOS 13 and saving to creating a drive to attach to my iPad Pro. I had this great idea that I was going to get it, and I was going to encrypt it, and then I was going to put a bunch of, data that I wanted to keep encrypted but take with me on the road. Turns out iOS 13 doesn't support encryption, so much for that.
But I didn't realize that.
But now it's going to become like where I put all my media on and stuff when we go on vacation. I can have like all of the Star Wars on the little drive. So that's good, though. I'm glad that you've been able to get that much time out of it. And to hear Brett Terpstra is not like struggling against a CPU from 2014. That should make the rest of us feel a little emasculated, but
I mean, other than compiling code, like I'm not editing a lot of video these days. Yeah. I'm not doing web design and coding are basically low processor intensive.
Yeah. Well, you're known, Brett, by so many of us as the guy on the Mac. I mean, you've come up with so much cool stuff on the Mac, and but you also, I saw you didn't you have an iPad with you at Mac this year?
Yeah, I got one of the 12.9 inch iPad Pros.
What do you think?
It is a great little device. Unfortunately, the two things I just mentioned, coding and web design, are not easy to replicate on an iPad. So I use it mostly for social media and writing. And it is great for both of those things. But Instagram never came out with an iPad client. So it's a little crippled in that area too.
Yeah. Yeah. I was just talking to Mike Schmitz this morning on a phone call about, where does the iPad fall down for us at this point? He was trying to figure out how to record a podcast with his iPad.
Oh, yeah. Why can we not yet do a split 2-channel recording.
You got me, man. Podcasters have been talking about it for a long time. I'm sure Apple's aware of it. I guess it's just not high enough on the list.
Yeah, I would love to be able to, if not like a multi-party, but just a 2-party podcast, I would love to be able to do on my iPad.
Yeah, for me, I feel like with iOS 13, I don't know, have you installed the beta yet?
No.
Okay.
So I'm not developing for iOS, and I don't like bricking stuff.
It is quite an improvement in terms of just like getting your work done. The new Safari, you're gonna love it. But there's still a few rough points for me. Like, as silly as it sounds, I have to do a lot of Microsoft Word documents, and you can't edit styles there. That's a rough patch for me sometimes. And like, I've got these workarounds I've got where I've been getting around them, but many of the old kind of showstoppers for me, Safari being one of them, have gone away with iOS 13. I just think there's going to be a lot of people that find they can get more work done on an iPad than they thought they could after September.
Yeah, that's what I've been reading about. I write most of the scripts that convert Vitici's reviews into ebooks.
Sure.
So I get advanced look at all of the new operating systems.
Yeah.
From Vitici's perspective.
Well, that's like a whole enterprise getting that thing done every year. And then you've got the iPhone too. So you're all in with Apple at this point.
Well, I have been for a long time, ever since the year 2000.
Yeah. All right. So iPad, iPhone, Mac.
I want to tell you about my keyboard solution, though.
Okay. On which device?
All of them.
All of them. Yes, I want to hear about this.
So first, I got the Ultimate Hacking Keyboard. It's a pretentious name for a keyboard, but it lives up to it. It's a split keyboard. You can use it as a single piece or split it apart into an ergonomic design, and you can attach the feet so that it tents in the middle or tilts back or whichever way you want it to move. And then it's fully programmable. So you can, like, first thing, obviously, I made my hyper keys, turned the tab key into sending all the modifiers at once.
Yeah.
Not the tab key, the caps lock key. But I also have it so if I hold down the tab key, J, K, L, and I start to move my mouse for me. And I can click with my thumb. I can have complete control over what the function key does. There's an extra mod key, the spacebar split. So by default, the left half of it, I switched it to the right half. But I can make it do anything, which I've gotten so used to it, it's hard to work without it. So as portable as my system may be, I always end up carrying around a big mechanical keyboard with me.
This is crazy.
Yeah. And then I found this thing. It's a little USB device that turns any keyboard into a Bluetooth keyboard. So I can plug my mechanical into that and connect it to my iPad. And as long as the device is charged up, I have a keyboard on my iPad.
All right. So I need to just take a minute to describe this for the listeners. It's like, so you've seen split keyboards before, like Microsoft has one, and usually they've got a big like aircraft carrier deck, and they've got the keyboard split on each side of it. The Ultimate Hacking Keyboard looks like a keyboard that someone took like a scroll saw and cut it in half, but they cut it by going around the keys, so like cut between T and Y and G and H. But then it's got this like, it looks like walnut, like beautiful like wood walnut inlays on the bottom of it.
Yeah, they sell those separately, but if you get one of these, absolutely get the wrist rest, the palm rest.
Yeah, and then it's got on your right, so you've got it, and it's got a cord between the two of them. And then on the right one, next to the space bar, there's a little thumb trackball.
Okay, so those thumb pads aren't available yet.
Okay.
I have a pre-order in for one for both sides, but they're still in prototype stage.
Oh,
when they do come out,
one on each side.
yeah. Both thumbs can have. You have a choice between like what do they call those? The little pointer ball, sticks.
Yeah.
Like you can have that
on the old. What was it? The IBM.
Pads.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then you can have a touchpad or a scroll wheel. And then there's one of the ones that I pre-ordered is a key cluster that gives you 5 extra keys by your thumb. You know how I like keys.
Yeah, no, I mean, I'm the same way. We just did a show last week with an artist, and I was talking about on my extended keyboard. I love it because the number pad is a whole set of macros for me. I don't even use it as a number pad. It's just it's a base for macros. Like that's one thing I would miss with this Ultimate Hacking keyboard. It doesn't have a number pad.
Did I show you my Keybow? The Pomeroni Keybow. Let me see if I can find it real quick.
Brett, you're always costing us money.
That's what I do. This is a little Raspberry Pi kit that has light up 12 key keypad.
Yeah.
And every key on it is programmable, including the LEDs for each key.
Yeah.
And you program, I can't remember what language it's in.
Yeah.
It was something I had to learn just to program this keyboard. But it gave me that extra 12 keys as if I had an extra number pad on my computer.
And if you don't want to do that, you can also just go and buy one of those game pads as well. Yeah. That would work. Now, the Ultimate Hacking keyboard is not wireless, right? It plugs in. Yeah.
Nope. And that's where that extra device I sent you.
Yeah.
Or the link to. I didn't send you one.
So the Bluetooth, you can make it Bluetooth to your Mac as well as your iOS device that way.
Right.
All right.
And the USB on it is also pass-through, so you can have it function as with a little button on it. So you can have it like switch between your Mac and your iPad with one tap of a button.
Nice.
Which I also have an external for my iPad that does the same. You can like have multiple Bluetooth hooked up to it, but this is a mechanical that can do the same thing.
Do you get to pick the cherry switches? I'm looking at the website. Do you get to pick your cherry switch?
Yeah, you actually, mine are cherry brown, but you can get it with reds and blues too.
Yeah. Wow, this is quite a keyboard. Then on the left keyboard, it's got an LED display, or I guess a liquid.
Yeah.
What is that?
You can have multiple layouts and then switch between them, and that display shows you which layout is active.
Sure, like it's QWERTY in the sample, so it's QWR.
And mine is BMT because this is a completely custom layout, so it gets my initials.
Wait, so you made your own key layout for your keyboard?
Well, yeah, I mean, I customized it to the extent, if you, on my blog, that photo with all the colored keys, like those are all custom, so I kind of built my own with it, which is entirely what it's for.
Yeah. Right, I love it. I love it. How long have you had this thing?
Oh boy. When was that article written? Almost a year, I think.
Yeah.
I wrote about it a month after I bought it, and the first article I wrote about it was August 17th of 2018.
This is a rabbit hole that I am going to be looking into after we record today. And me and probably several listeners will be cursing you.
Do you want me to call and check on you after a while?
Maybe. I might need some help. I don't know. This is I honestly, like, there's part of me that wants so badly to become a keyboard nerd. But then part of me that, the Apple one, it works fine. I'm not like that picky about it. And I like that there's no cord on my desk. It's tough.
Here, follow this link and just look at the headline image, and you'll see how hard I've tried over the years to become a keyboard nerd. And that picture is like a graveyard of all my failed attempts.
All right, I'll put this in the show notes. That's a lot of keyboards.
I always came back to the older Bluetooth Apple keyboard. Yeah. The one right before the Magic keyboard, when they screwed up the arrow keys.
Yeah. But the Ultimate Hacking keyboard is now your beloved, your precious.
Yep. It's the first mechanical I've ever stuck with.
Why is that?
I can't fully explain it. The feel of it, like usually when I start using mechanical, there's enough different about the feel that it takes me longer than I want to spend to stop making typing errors. With this one, I was instantly accurate. And I don't know if it's a matter of, I have never had one that split before. And I think my hands dealt well with splitting it apart and angling it in a little bit. Other than that, like the key travel is just exactly what my fingers wanted. It sunk in for me right away.
I bought the Keytron K1 keyboard, and I haven't written it up yet because it just never stuck with me. It's like they're half height cherry switches, and it feels mushy to me.
Yeah.
Just didn't work. But it was wireless, and I thought, well, that'd be cool. And honestly, it's got the lights on it, the LEDs, and after a while, it's like a carnival in here, you know?
Yeah.
I don't want that.
Yeah.
I should have got the one with just the white LEDs. I got the colors.
I like the LEDs on that little keyboard, but I would not want light up keyboard.
So it's called Ultimate Hacking Keyboard. Is that because you're hacking the construction of it, or you're using it? What's the H stand for?
As far as I can tell, it's because you can make the keyboard whatever you need it to be for whatever kind of hacking you do. I mean, assuming you're hacking on a computer. But it's open source. Like everything that runs it is open source. So you can literally hack it any way you want to.
Nice. All right. One last point on keyboards. You made mention of the, I forget, what do you call your caps lock key? It's the
hyper key.
The hyper key, yes. I'm a big fan of that. And so what Brett's done, and he's talked about this on past episodes, rather than using a caps lock key as a caps lock, when you tap the caps lock key, it effectively acts as pressing the 4 keys at once, Shift, Control, Option, Command, which is a great keyboard combination to add to macros and other things you want to automate on your Mac. And for the longest time, you recommended the application. It's slipping my mind. Oh, what's the name of it? Carabiner. But it was kind of hacky to get it to work. But Carabiner is now added to the basic setups that you can just press one button and you get the Brett Terpstra hyper key. It should be named after you, honestly.
Well, so here's the thing, and somehow the hyper key became mine, much like nvUltra became mine against my will.
Yeah,
it was actually space something. I learned it from someone else, and I always credited that person when I wrote about it, and he named it hyperkey.
Yeah.
So it's not mine. And
okay. I thought it was
I'm
yours.
happy to admit that.
Yeah.
I know everyone does. Everyone's like, oh, the Brett Terpstra hyperkey. Yeah. But just to state for the record again, I didn't invent this.
Well, in the Keyboard Maestro Field Guide, there's a whole video explaining how to set it up, and you get full credit. So either way, if you guys have thought about that in the past and been intimidated by the work, it's much easier now. Just download Carabiner elements and you're good. This episode of the Mac Power Users is brought to you by ButcherBox. Thoughtfully sourced meat delivered to your door. Get 2 pounds of ground beef, 2 packs of bacon, plus $20 off your first box. Just go to butcherbox.com/MPU. That's right, gang. This week, we're talking about meat on the Mac Power Users. That stuff you get at the grocery store, where does that come from? Do you really know? Well, the folks who deliver thoughtfully sourced meat from ButcherBox do. And right now, they're offering 2 pounds of ground beef and 2 packs of bacon for free, plus $20 off your first box. So stick around to hear more about that. ButcherBox makes it convenient to get high-quality meat that you can trust. So you can enjoy things like 100% grass-fed and grass-finished beef, free-range organic chicken, heritage breed pork, wild Alaskan salmon, and bacon that's uncured, nitrate-free, and sugar-free. That's right, I said bacon. Here's how it works. You can choose from 4 curated box types, including a custom box where you can choose exactly how much you need. Each butcher box comes with at least 9 to 11 pounds of meat, which is enough for 24 individual meals, and it's delivered right to your doorstep with free shipping. ButcherBox believes in a healthier food system where everybody has access to meat that's humanely raised and free of antibiotics and added hormones. And because ButcherBox works with a collection of ranches, it's able to cut out the grocery store middleman and pass those savings to you. So what I'm telling you is you're getting better meat and it's costing less. Go to butcherbox.com/MPU to get $20 off your first box, plus 2 pounds of ground beef and 2 pounds of bacon, or just enter promo code MPU at checkout. Delicious meat at your front door. Does it get better than that? So go check it out. butcherbox.com/MPU or enter offer code MPU for that $20 off your first box, plus 2 pounds of ground beef and 2 packs of bacon. Our thanks to ButcherBox for their support of this show and all of Relay FM. All right, Brett, I know you've been busy working with nvUltra over the years. So many of us love that text editor that you had this big role in. And you've been known, frankly, for the work you've done with text on the various devices for all of us. But I was super happy to hear that nvAlt is about to make a comeback, and you're collaborating with Fletcher Penny on it.
Yes.
So tell us about what's coming down the road.
All right. So nvAlt was originally based on notational velocity, thus the NV. And once again, notational velocity was not mine, but nvAlt was, it started as a branch, a fork of notational velocity that I made on a lunch break back when I owned a design firm and didn't have as much time to code. It was a way to just try some things out. And I started adding things to it and eventually just named it nvAlt and kind of continued to fork. Like a lot of those changes were never pushed back into notational velocity, and it kind of became its own monster. And I did support that for a decade, or at least it seems like a decade, maybe. But then the code base was old enough that it became questionable that I would be able to keep it running over the next few operating system changes. So I started working on a commercial replacement, originally with David Halter, and then that hit a bunch of snags, and I had kind of started to tinker with the idea of giving up on it. And it was a real stress load for me because I had promised so many people something that had taken 5 years to go to beta, and it never made it. And
like takes on a life of its own at some point.
Right. So then Fletcher Penny contacted me and he's like, hey, I don't want to step on any toes, but I've got this thing. And he described it, and it was everything that I wanted the successor to nvAlt to be. And he was at that point already pretty close to code complete. So I said, hey, can we team up? I'll help with development. I'll especially help with support and planning, branding, web design, all of that. So I am not the primary coder on this. Fletcher is, and I'm doing everything I can to make it a success as a marketable app. So we're it's called nvUltra, which is a play on nvAlt, and we looked around for its own name to kind of drop the NV, but nothing struck us as cool as nvUltra. So for the time being, that is what it's actually going to be called. And it doubles down on the markdown. nvAlt was heavily geared towards using markdown in notes. You still had the option to use rich text, but no one that I knew was using it that way, and I wasn't using it that way. So nvUltra incorporates the full engine, the editing system from Multi Markdown Composer by Fletcher Penny.
Yeah,
and it is advanced. Like for Markdown editing, it is highly advanced, and it no longer features rich text as an option, which I will stand by. It's upset some people, but I think by and large,
I feel like if you wanted rich text, there's much better places to go than something like this.
Yeah, well, and RTF it's not a great format if you really want rich text. There are definitely better ways to go, better structured documents. So we dropped that, and basically everything that nvAlt could do, it can do better, with one small exception that I want to get out in front of so we don't disappoint a bunch of people, but okay. So I have to start by saying, whereas nvAlt and notational velocity worked with one folder or one database, and everything went into this one bucket, nvUltra can use any folder and immediately index it and give you the full speed search of that folder, but then you can have 3 different folders, 3 different buckets, and have them all open at once or switch between them. There's a little quick open navigator that you can jump between all your folders instantly. As a result, it no longer syncs with Simple Note because Simple Note requires that one bucket approach.
Yeah.
So I didn't realize how many people were going to be upset by that. I didn't realize how many people still relied on Simple Note. So I'm putting it out there in advance. We may consider an option to have a single folder dedicated to Simple Note in the future, but it's not on the immediate roadmap.
Well, I was lucky enough to get in on the beta. I've just started using it, but it looks really good. And man, it pushes all of those nvUltra buttons that I'm used to. Like, it's got that search bar at the top. You can create a new note just from the search. The things that we really liked about nvUltra seem to be there. For the listeners who don't know Fletcher Penny, he's been on the show in the past. He's a physician, but also just a bang up programmer. And he's the guy who also came up with the multi-markdown, I don't know, what you say? I guess
syntax.
the variant?
Yeah, flavor.
Or the fork or whatever you call it of Markdown that brought in footnotes and a bunch of other features that the original Markdown didn't have. And he had an application, the multi-markdown composer for some time, but this, I can see your influence in it. I even like the font. I haven't seen that font before.
Fletcher's fun to argue with over fonts.
Oh, I bet. Yeah, I bet you guys are both pretty opinionated. I'd like to listen in on some of those calls.
Yeah, they are. It was part of the reason he wanted to team up with me, was because he knew I was opinionated and had crazy ideas, and that the two of us, if we could find a way to catalyze those very differing viewpoints on things, that we could reach something that was better than either of us would alone. And he was right.
And the model for this application really is that you're going to have a folder, maybe you have multiple folders you're working out of, but nvUltra creates a bunch of text files inside that folder. So it's ultra portable, I guess, and ultra compatible, because at the end of the day, they're just text files. So you're never going to have a problem with getting these or putting them somewhere else. I think I'm glad to see this coming back. I know people listening, when nvUltra first showed up, it was pretty much a Mac world. Now it's a Mac, iPad, and iPhone world. Can you talk about future plans for iOS?
Yeah. Well, for the time being, we're releasing a Mac version first, but the engine that everything is based on is already iOS compatible. So there is a good probability that this will be followed by an iOS companion. No guarantees yet, but it is absolutely feasible and possible, and I think we would both like to see it. Right now, though, because it is a folder of plain text files, you can throw it in Dropbox or on iCloud Drive and use something like OneWriter on iOS to access all your notes the same way.
Yeah.
I love OneWriter.
That is a very popular app. One thing that you used to do, do you still support that spreadsheet of text editors on iOS?
Yeah.
I think I read recently on your blog how that got smaller.
Yeah, there was this weird die-off. All of these kind of original text editing apps stopped being supported, and then over a couple of iOS updates had stopped running and just kind of disappeared. So I had to go through the whole list and figure out what was dead weight. Lost about 30% of the list.
Well, I mean, the model was hard because people, they charge a few bucks for these text editors.
and then support them for decades.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you can't do that, right?
No.
So what is it about OneWriter that tickles your fancy?
Well, it's got that super fast search, just like the NV lineage. Not as fast as on my Mac, but I can find what I'm looking for very quickly. And then it's very extensible. You can write little macros for it to add anything from markdown formatting to draft style, send to other applications.
Yeah. It seems to be the one that most folks are using these days for plain text.
It's solid.
Yeah. And it works great with nvUltra.
It does.
So what's it like now? I mean, this is kind of a different app for you. I mean, you've always come out with cool stuff, Brett, that like you put together on a lunch break and just put it out there. But this needs to be a business for you at this point. I mean, I'm assuming you're going to sell this, right?
Right. Yeah, there will be a free trial, but no free version of nvUltra.
Okay.
We're going to sell it at a sustainable price. We're not going to go subscription with it. Both Fletcher and I support apps that have gone subscription, and I totally understand why developers do. But neither of us wants to sell a subscription app. I do hope to get it onto SetApp.
Okay.
And have some recurring income from it there. Mark has done quite well on SetApp for me. So we're going to find a price. We're still debating the exact price, but we're going to find a price that will be steep by the standards of 2 years ago. But thanks to companies like Omni coming out with real prices for their apps, I feel like the app market is finally regaining its footing, and people are realizing that 99 cents is not enough for a good app.
Well, I mean, that text editor spreadsheet is a good example. I mean, there were some great apps in there that are no longer supported.
Right.
And
like Writing Kit was a great app, way too cheap. I can understand how that wasn't sustainable.
Yeah. So, we need, as users, we don't want to overpay, but we also, if we're thinking about it, we really don't want to underpay either, because we need the developers to be able to continue to make the apps great. And Apple is not, taking its foot off the gas with new features with iOS and Mac OS,
right,
and now iPad OS. So, we want these apps to follow along. Like when you guys make an iOS app, I hope it supports dark mode and all the other stuff that they've added in iOS 13.
You would want that.
Yeah, and that costs money,
Yeah.
Did you pick the font or did Fletcher?
I picked most of the default stuff.
Yeah.
There are alternative themes. If you go up to like the view menu or into preferences, there's different themes with different fonts, and you have a choice between like your standard Avenir and then a bunch of custom fonts that we debated. I spent hours going through like all the available fonts, both open source and some proprietary, and putting together little spec sheets for Fletcher. And then I would narrow 500 fonts down to 50 fonts, and then we would pick our favorites and go with overlaps and debate others. And it was a long, arduous process, but we both had input in the end.
Can I say the name of the default font, or is that a secret?
That's fine.
It's Cambay. I don't think did that come with the app? I'm not sure I even seen this font before.
No, it's a Google font that's embedded.
Okay. It's nice looking. It's good for text, I think, for the kind of thing you do with nvUltra. Yeah. Very nice. And like, if you write Markdown, like creating links, I mean, it's just, of course, if you put Brett and Fletcher together, you're going to get, this is exactly what you would expect. Something that just makes Markdown much easier and more powerful.
I agree. Copy a URL, select some text, and hit Command V, and you've automatically created a Markdown link without having to type any of the brackets or anything.
And it does it for you. And I bet this is going to be great.
Drag an image into it, drag any file into it. You can the file list shows not just your text files, but any other, because it works with subfolders. So you can have a folder full of images and then drag them from the list into your current note, and it will create the Markdown syntax. And then there's the live preview, so you can actually see the image show up there.
And this is coming soon.
Yes, as soon as possible.
All right. So if you're interested at all, there is a beta sign up right now. How's that going, running betas for a bunch of people?
Well, every time we think that we've gotten all the possible suggestions from the beta pool, we expand the pool. And we're at about 500 testers right now. And all of the sudden, the feedback like doubled. Yeah. So now Fletcher and I spend time every day not only solving bugs, but debating features and getting feedback, and then implementing things and releasing new builds. And it has become quite the full-time job, this whole beta thing.
But then at some point you just got to ship, right? I mean, you can't do it forever.
Yeah, we have a Meister task board going where most new features are getting moved into like the 1.1 column or the 2.0 column.
Yeah.
And it's like a Trello board, right?
Sure.
And so most of them are going on for roadmap for after ship. So we're not overloading the first release.
if you're interested, and I think you should be if you're listening to the Mac Power Users, I guess the best place would be nvUltra.com.
Right. So that list is pretty long now, the waiting list to get onto the beta. But if you are a person who works a lot in a non-English language that has special characters, or a person with accessibility concerns, we want to test, especially with accessibility. But it's not localized in any other language. But if you speak both English and another tongue, we do want to hear from those people. So add yourself to the list, but also contact me directly through my website, and we will accept a certain number of candidates directly into the beta.
I cannot wait for this to release. I think a lot of people are going to really dig this. This episode of the Mac Power Users is brought to you by 1Password. Head to 1password.com/MPU in all caps to get 20% off your subscription. It's been a while now since 1Password version 7 was released. Have you got it installed? If not, you should. With 1Password version 7, there's a lot of great new features. To begin with, the 1Password mini browser has been completely redesigned. Every pixel has been reimagined to give you more information and control, so you can keep all your passwords, credit cards, and other information right at your fingertips. But there's more than a pretty face to this updated version. They've also updated Watchtower and security. Data breaches happen all the time, and if you use 1Password 7, Watchtower alerts you if any of your passwords have been compromised and need to be changed. It also keeps track of expiring items like credit cards and passports, and warns you of unsecured websites. Watchtower now integrates twofactorauth.org, so you'll know when you aren't using two-factor authentication on a site that supports it. The new version also fully supports dark mode on the Mac. It looks great. I love the way the colorful icons look against that dark background. I even use it sometimes when my Mac is not in dark mode. Now, if you're still using 1Password 6 with Safari, you'll need to either upgrade to 1Password 7 before the Mac OS Catalina comes out later this year, or switch to another browser. So if you're using Safari, get on 1Password 7 now so you can get it all sorted out before the big upgrade happens in a couple months. With 1Password 7, both the Windows and Mac apps were completely rebuilt to give you the most powerful and streamlined password experience ever. My favorite bit about the new design is the sidebar that lets me see all of my accounts and vaults with a single glance. Either way, head over to 1password.com/MPU. Once again, that's 1password.com/MPU. Make that in all caps and you'll get 20% off your subscription. Our thanks to 1Password for supporting Mac Power Users. Now, Brett, when we were at MacStock, you gave a presentation on kind of project management stuff and talked about, was it Taskmeister?
Yeah. Oh, Meistertask.
Meistertask, sorry.
It gets confusing because their other product is MindMeister. So they keep reversing it.
That was right after my talk, and I was cooked. So I just went and got a drink, honestly. So then everybody came to me, oh man, Terpstra's talk was amazing. So tell us a little bit how you're managing. I guess I would imagine nvUltra was probably a good reason for you to bone up on project management. You're working with another person, you've got deadlines.
Yeah.
So how are you doing those things these days?
So the talk was about my writing workflow, which is basically the same as all my workflows, but it was about the process I use to get past the blank page syndrome.
Yeah.
Which involves then a lot of task management and brainstorming tricks.
Yeah.
So now that I've clarified that, I forgot the question.
I just wanted to kind of talk through the task management and brainstorming process.
Yeah. Yeah.
And Meistertask looks a lot like Trello. I didn't realize that.
It is almost a Trello clone, but it adds a lot better dashboard management and having multiple boards. You get a single dashboard and communication with everyone. I haven't used Trello in a long time, so I don't know where that app's at these days, but Meistertask has been a great collaborative task management tool for me.
All right. So how does it fit in like, maybe let's just talk about it in relation to your development of nvUltra.
Basically, it gives Fletcher and I, like any Kanban system, the ability to have one column that's just brainstorming. These are features we'd like to discuss, possibly implement, and then we can have discussions on each task, like in line with that task. And if it's decided we're going to go forward with this, it gets moved into like an open column or an in progress column and assigned to one or the other of us. And once it's done, we can have any further discussion on it and then mark it off and archive it. And then we can have columns for future roadmap points to move things off the current plate, but keep them in line. And Kanban in general just works really well for that kind of, not quite an agile workflow, but a collaborative workflow with a lot of flexibility.
Now, and Kanban, I believe, really got its start with software development.
Yeah, with agile workflows.
Yeah, and the first time I ever saw it implemented was actually analog with note cards, where they would just stick note cards to a board. And the idea of it, if you've never heard of it before, it's columns of categories of work or statuses. I guess status is probably the better term. Like Brett was saying, there's, brainstorm ideas, or there's probably a column with Brett's name on it, or...
So the columns would be, like in this case, one would be called inbox, which is the brainstorming.
Yeah.
And then there's an in progress or open, basically like things that are going to happen. Once you take a task and you assign one of the members to it, then it can go into the in progress column. And then from there, it'll either go into completed or it'll go into canceled or off to one of the future columns.
And the whole idea is you get cards that make their way across the columns until they're completed, canceled, or otherwise disposed of.
Right.
And it's very powerful. Although it started out as a software thing, I think this is useful for any group of people that are working together on a project.
I actually use it solo too.
Oh, do you? I was going to ask about that because for me, all this stuff is managed for me with the templated OmniFocus projects.
Right. And it is for me as well. I only use Kanban in specific brainstorming contexts.
Okay.
If I'm doing it on my own, if I'm trying to figure out what post I'm going to write for a day, I keep a Kanban board where all of my kind of post ideas.
Sure.
Anything I've thought of that I might write about at some point, and that's the inbox. And then I can use the columns to kind of sort and track what I'm working on, because I start a lot of articles that I don't finish right away.
Yeah.
So it helps me just kind of like agile workflow my way through getting a post out on the blog.
And visually putting the post ideas on cards does, I think, sometimes tickle other parts of your brain.
Yeah, exactly. And I could do all of this in OmniFocus, but I tend to keep OmniFocus for hard to do tasks. And my blog it's not my primary source of income. I like to keep a presence up there, but if I need some time off from it, I'm free to do that.
Yeah.
I don't consider those hard due date tasks, which is what I generally like OmniFocus to be.
Gotcha.
Well, even if not even without due dates, I like them to be definite things I'm going to do.
Yeah, I do like, though, the idea of this Kanban system for folks considering it who never considered it, because it's just a different way of project management. I think in a lot of ways it's more accessible. And with a group in particular, it does a lot of things. Like I'm thinking back to when I used to work on some bigger kind of trial things. I'm trying not to do that kind of stuff these days. But when there was multiple paralegals, sometimes multiple attorneys, expert witnesses. Something like this could have been really useful to share amongst the group so everybody knew exactly what they were responsible for and everybody could see what the progress was of everything everybody was doing.
Yeah.
And it's just a nice summary way to do it. So Meister Task, and then how did you come across this one? It's a web-based tool that's an essentially Kanban board.
I have been for years a huge fan of their other product, MindMeister, which is a collaborative mind mapping application that is excellent if you ever want to mind map with somebody. and then they came out with, in the last couple of years, they came out with Meister Task. And I had been such a big fan of MindMeister that I'd gotten to know the people behind it in an online sense. And they let me know that they had this new product and wanted me to try it out. And I immediately, I was first able to sink my teeth into it because you could convert a MindMeister map into a project.
Yeah.
And just take your brainstorming map with any attached due dates and whatnot, and just immediately port the map or any branch of the map as a ready to go Kanban board. So that made it easy to start testing. And once I got into it, I started inviting people to join various boards for whatever I was working on. And it always seems to go over well with people. And it just kind of became my central place to collaborate.
Didn't MindMeister also make a product that did really cool online collaborative Gantt charts as well at one point?
No, I don't think so.
I must be confusing them with somebody else. I don't know.
There was one mapping tool that combined Gantt charts online. What was Mind Manager on the Mac? Used to do Gantt charts.
Yeah, I don't know.
I never liked Gantt charts much.
Yeah, well, they can work. It just depends on what you're doing. But like Meister Task, I'm thinking back when you and I wrote those 60 tips books, this would have been perfect for that.
Would have been.
Yeah. Except when you'd see like during various times of production, one of us would be sorely behind the other. And it just depended on which one. I mean, it wasn't just one or the other. There were both of us.
At any given time.
Yeah.
It was usually me, let's be honest.
Well, it was me too, on occasion. All right, so you're using Meister Task. I like that. And then what was the other big app you were talking about in terms of getting your writing flow going?
Oh, Curio.
Yeah, that's another one that I have played with in the past. I think I've even written about it in MacSparky, but it's just never took with me. And that's a Mac app as well that is it's kind of very similar to what you're talking with MindMeister. Isn't it kind of like a
kind of? It's extensive. So the idea behind Curio is you have spaces.
Yeah.
So you have a left sidebar and a space is like a page. It's a free-form, open environment that you can drag in mind maps or Google Docs or note cards, they're called figures, and you can start building your space out with all of these different types of information. And you can also drag in any external files. You can drag an email to it, and it'll put a preview of that email in there and then link back to the original with quick look of any non-image, non-text file types you put in. And so you can build, and you can draw like, let's say this is my column for contacts involved in this project, and then just start dragging contacts into that column that you can then move as a single figure. So you have this super flexible open space that functions like its own desktop kind of thing.
A canvas that you can work on. Yeah.
Good word, canvas. And then what always impresses me and sells me on Curio is that I can copy any idea space or any part of an idea space as Markdown, as OPML, as a mind map, anything I need to do, which makes it ideal for getting started with a writing project. Like I have a dozen different ways I start a writing project, but if it's a larger piece with a lot of research, a lot of references, a lot of information, a lot of brainstorming, Curio is kind of an ideal place to gather all of that and then easily export it into a Markdown document that I can start fleshing out.
Yeah, and it goes pretty deep. I mean, it's got layers. You can do a lot with this app.
And I'm not invested in it day to day. Like I don't use it for everything.
Yeah.
You could, and it's got like whole task management systems built into it and everything. I use it one project at a time, basically. It's not my always go-to application, but when I do need it, when I do use it, it is extremely complete and constantly impressive.
It's nice looking. Now, if someone uses this and they go over to iPad, is there a way to share the data, or is this mainly a Mac thing?
I don't think there's an iOS viewer for it. I know that there's a Curio Core version, so people who aren't Curio users can still open up your workspaces.
Yeah.
And you can share stuff that way. If they are Curio users, you can collaborate between people on Macs. I don't think there's an iOS companion.
Nice. Well, it's quite impressive. And every time I look at this app, I'm like, I should be using something like this. I do like the way it does let you put so many different data sources in one place.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
And so that's where you go to kind of start your big writing projects.
Yeah.
After you mind map it.
Well, I can mind map in Curio. I do often prefer to mind map in iThoughts, though, which does have a great iOS companion.
Yeah, it does. And then at some point, you got to start writing the words. And I would guess you are in nvUltra for that at this point.
Actually, I've always been a fan of Multi-Markdown Composer.
You're not using your own app?
Well, so I consider nvUltra, it's a place for notes. I don't write long pieces in my notes app. I take my notes and turn them into long pieces in Multi-Markdown Composer.
Sure.
You absolutely could. But one thing that Multi-Markdown Composer has that nvUltra does not is the table of contents, because it is designed for longer notes. And the table of contents, when I bring in one of these brainstorm files, it's usually a bunch of headlines with sparse paragraphs between them.
Yeah.
And with the table of contents in MMDC, which is an abbreviation for Multi-Markdown Composer, I can drag those around in the table of contents and reorder the document.
You can also, a nice feature with Multi-Markdown Composer is you can just see the current section you're working on. And I really like that.
It has a ton of powerful features, a lot of which are in nvUltra, but our philosophy was kind of nvUltra should be for quick notes. So some of those features, like the table of contents, we would want, like personally as users, we would want to do those in an app designed for long form writing.
Yeah. And nvUltra really strikes me as the modern version of nvAlt. I mean, that's what it's intended to
be. Perfect.
You know, but it looks better. And yeah, frankly, I know some folks are unhappy with the multiple folder data source, but for me, that makes it more useful because I can actually set series of notes based on different areas of my life and to see those with different folders.
Yeah.
I kind of like that. I mean, like I have too many notes is my problem. Like when I try and run this out of Apple Notes, I'm over 1,200 notes. I'd much rather have it down to 3 or 4 libraries and say, okay, the Max Sparky stuff or the legal stuff.
Totally.
Yeah.
That's the way I feel as well. Because, I mean, we all have very separate contexts.
Yeah.
Well, I think most people do anyway. Like, even if it's just work and home, like those notes don't have crossover. It makes sense to not keep them in one bucket.
Agreed. Well, that's pretty impressive workflow you got there. The nice thing is it sounds to me like you don't have so many steps that it's getting in the way of actually writing the words.
I guess the biggest reason I love my scattered workflow is I keep everything interoperable. Like I can use any 2 pieces of my workflow together. Yeah. They all import and export in portable formats. It's easy for me to get where I'm going, no matter which route makes the most sense at the time.
Yeah.
And as an ADHD person, it's important that whatever route I go ends up working for me.
And for a writing workflow, it's important that at some point you're staring at a blinking cursor.
Right.
Do you ever do writing in Curio?
Yeah, I will use it to start paragraphs. By the time I get to fleshing out and, editing, writing out the long form version, no, it doesn't have nearly the text engine that any markdown editor would have.
Sure.
Like I'll write in iThoughts too. I'll use the notes on a node to start writing a paragraph instead of making really long mind map nodes.
Yeah.
I'll write out what I was thinking about something in its notes, because then when I export that as markdown, I have starter paragraphs basically in whatever app I end up editing in.
Yeah, it makes sense. One last thing about your writing workflows. You have in the past you've put tools together that do some sort of grammar analysis,
Yeah.
the basics, like looking for repeated words and whatnot. Are you doing that with your own writing, any of that analysis? If so, how are you doing it?
Yeah. Most of what I do is through Marked, which
Yeah.
is my main commercial application up until nvUltra is released. And it can do your basic grammar and spelling checking. It can show me repeated words, cliched words. The plain English dictionary is incorporated into it. I don't know if you've ever visited that, but helps you figure out where you need to use a more descriptive or less robust word for something.
It's hilarious when I run like contracts through that stuff. Like,
Yeah,
because a bunch of it's like inherited text.
right.
It's like, do you really need that here and after there?
Yeah. So that's all built into it. And I tend to just load my text up in Mark to not only see how it's going to look on the blog, but also run all of those analysis tools.
Yeah, and you can get Marked. I mean, Marked, we haven't talked about it, but in shows past we have. It's Marked is a tool that Brett made that you can take your markdown text and see it formatted. That was in my mind, the original idea of the app. And since then it has become so much more. Like it's doing grammar analysis. It's doing
the important part is that it tracks the file it's viewing.
Yeah.
So it's showing you the rendered preview, and every time you hit save as you're editing the same file, it's updating the preview with no extra work on your part. So it basically adds a live markdown preview to any text editor, including like Vim or Emacs.
Yeah. But I mean, it works with Scrivener files. It's like every time I open the app, Brett has added some new amazing feature. This code preview.
It even works with Highland and Fountain IO now.
That's new. When did you add that?
It's been there for a long time. It's never been a major selling feature because people using Fountain it's a much smaller audience than.
Yeah.
But John August has worked with me to make sure that as they release new versions of Highland, that Merck keeps up with the file formats and everything.
Yeah, I would know because I've never used that app, but yeah, that makes sense. Of course you support it. But you can get it at markedapp.com, or if you're a SetApp subscriber, as Brad said earlier, you can get it right as part of your SetApp subscription. Yep. But it's just another, like if you work in text, I think it's a tool you should have.
Speaking of SetApp, I did put out a script a little while ago that will go through your applications folder and tell you if you have apps on your drive that are also available on SetApp, because using the SetApp version of an app you already have, make sure that part of your monthly SetApp fee is going to the developer of that app. So it is a kindness to use the SetApp version, which is always exactly the same. It's required to be the same.
I never thought of that, but you're right.
Yeah, I'll find you a link for that script. It makes it easy.
This episode of the Mac Power Users is brought to you by OmniGraffle. Precise, beautiful graphics that anyone can make. OmniGraffle is the application the Omni Group makes to help create beautiful diagrams and designs. It's an easy-to-use app that I've been using for years for basically all of the graphics in my life. I started using OmniGraffle as a tool to make diagrams for things I was doing in the legal practice, but that quickly grew because OmniGraffle is really easy to use, and once you figure it out, it's no trouble to start expanding your usage for other things. As a result, not only do I use it for the graphics for my law practice, I also use it for exhibits on trial work. I use it for the illustrations inside the MacSparky field guides. Just a few weeks ago at MacSparky, I published a bunch of GoodNotes templates for making a digital diary. All of those were made in OmniGraffle. In fact, I published the OmniGraffle files, so if you've got the app, you can download them and play with it in OmniGraffle. The thing that makes OmniGraffle so great is it has both power and ease of use. In terms of power, you've got layers, resolution independence, tables, there's an artboard presentation mode, and interactive actions. If you draw something on the screen, it automatically centers as you drag it around. If you attach an arrow to an object, the arrow follows the object as you move it around. A bunch of things that I would never think of as someone who doesn't make my living making graphics, but are immediately easy to see and use as someone who doesn't make their living making graphics. And like I said earlier, OmniGraffle is an excellent diagramming tool. You can explain anything from a simple family tree to a complex system theory with a diagram, and you can use charts to represent data and processes with symbols, graphics, and connecting lines. Diagramming in OmniGraffle is made extremely easy with those powerful tools. It's automatic, robust, and ready for styling. And I haven't even mentioned the stencils and libraries. There's a whole collection of stencils made by OmniGraffle folks and outside people that are available to download and use inside the application. Whenever I'm making presentation graphics, it's those stencils that always come in so handy to get me exactly what I want. OmniGraffle is a powerful tool that will not overwhelm you. If you need help with your graphics, why not do it yourself with OmniGraffle? Go to the website at omnigroup.com, click on the OmniGraffle button, and download the free sample and try it for yourself. And make sure to let them know you heard about it here on the Mac Power Users. So, Brett, we're trying to talk to guests about home screens lately. And if you haven't signed up for the Mac Power Users newsletter, we send out the newsletter that goes out with each episode with a copy of the guest's home screen. We'll also put it in the show notes so you can just see it if you tap in the show notes. But Brett sent me his home screen, and I feel like this is one that we have to talk about.
Oh dear.
It's just there are a lot of folders and there are a lot of apps on your iPhone.
Oh, that's page 1, but there's only 3 pages. So no, there's only 2 pages. It's a lot of folders, but only 2 pages. So I feel okay about that.
I think I know what you're going for, but explain it for us. Because at the top, you've got there's the 1Password is an app, and there's 3 apps on the bottom. And other than that, they're all folders. But explain what you're going for with these folders.
Okay. Well, first of all, the 3 apps on the bottom are usually, it's a rotating, they're apps that I need access to at the time, but don't necessarily need on the home screen all the time.
Yeah.
Did you know that if you force touch the Find My iPhone app, you can get shortcuts to the devices? So every time my girlfriend loses her phone, I'm 2 taps away from pinging it for her.
Yeah. And it's even better with iOS 13. They call it now contextual.
Right.
So it'll work on iPad as well.
Yes.
And that app has changed too, but whatever. I think they did that. Now you can find people and devices with one app.
It's Find My Everything.
Yeah. Yeah. But the folders.
All of my folders are named with verbs: capture, communicate, play, read. So then it's very contextual. I think they're what you would expect, but like the capture folder includes both camera apps, scanner apps, even some like voice memos is in there. It's not text capture stuff because that goes under write, which I guess makes sense to me.
And that's all that matters, right? That it makes sense to you, right? Because when you're setting this up, what's the first place you would go to when you think of that?
Right. And that's how those folders are created. I start by creating what I consider the basic folders. And then as I start dragging apps into folders, if there's not one that instinctively feels right to me, that makes sense, like this is where I would look for that app, then I'll usually end up making a new folder. At least if I can think of several apps that would go in the same category. Yeah. And then I try to keep my my home screen limited to 20 folders so that I have that bottom row open, which is a holdover from olden days when that was the easiest way to swipe.
Yeah.
But those spaces at the bottom become, like I said, kind of roving in essentials.
And then you have a couple folders in your dock as well.
Right. The first folder in my dock is called Gravitate. And those are apps that there's a 50% chance that if I open my phone, it's one of those apps that I want. So they're right there, right next to my left thumb. And then the second one is kind of business apps, Fantastical and Dropbox and OmniPlan and to-do stuff and organization stuff, which could easily go in a work folder up top. I have a little space in my dock, so I use them.
Yeah, I've been playing because I'm on the beta. With iOS 13, shortcuts from the home screen are a lot smoother. Like in the iOS 12, it would jump to Safari first, and the whole process felt a little rickety to me, and now it's much cleaner. So I've been experimenting with the same idea, kind of coming from a different angle. I really like the idea of contextualizing your phone, though. And I think you're onto something to say, I go to this place when I want to do something that's writing, or you've got one called read, and anything you want to read, you go to this place and that's all your reading stuff.
Right.
How long have you been doing it this way?
Oh, years.
Yeah, it works. I mean, I've really been experimenting seriously with it just for a couple of weeks, and I can already see. For me, the idea was, I've even because I'm using shortcuts, I've done contextualization of my various interests, like the Mac Sparky versus the lawyer versus the dad. And I literally have very focused like websites and apps and different things all under these shortcuts. But I like what you've done here. Now, do you use the 3D touch or what's about to become contextual touch much?
I love 3D touch.
Yeah.
/ contextual touch. I hope it never fully goes away, because when you're using folders and one of the apps in the folder has a badge notification, you can force touch that folder and jump right to the apps that actually have notifications.
Yes.
Stuff like that it makes perfect sense to me. I understand why Apple touted it as a new feature when it came out, and somehow it never caught on. They kind of stopped talking about it after a while, because most people, you'd bring it up for them or bring it up with them, and they would have no idea what you were talking about.
I've got a post half written on this. I kind of have a theory that because it was inconsistent, like there were some phones it worked on and some that it didn't. And then it doesn't.
It's kind of like AppleScript. It was up to every developer to implement it in their way, and there was a lot of inconsistency in that.
I also think that the fact that it didn't exist at all on iPad has been a problem, because I feel like something like this you need to start using everywhere to really appreciate it. But with iOS 13, they've really put the hammer down on this, because it's better now. I mean, there's more options. And it works on all devices. And also the force touch thing, I think, was unintuitive for a lot of people.
Yeah.
It always felt weird to me, force pressing on the phone. Not that I thought I was going to break the glass, but it's just like, that's something that would not come natural. Well, hey, what if I just press this really hard, Whereas now it's just a long press, but there's kind of a rhythm to it with iOS 13. It's like there's a little bounce and you lift right at. I mean, you got to figure it out. But I think this is going to become a bigger thing.
I hope it does.
Yeah, me too.
I sent you a Lifehacker article I wrote on 3D touch, and I could not believe the number of comments after the article, that both on the blog and direct to me or on Twitter, from people that really had no idea that their phone could do this kind of stuff at all.
Yeah, it's crazy, because a lot of the stuff you spend time opening and navigating apps. In fact, most of the stuff, if the developer knows what they're doing, is fully accessible without even opening the app, using that 3D touch, or about to be called contextual touch. That's the one thing I miss with this shortcut experiment, is that I don't have access to the app icons that I'm not using. So I've actually put folders at the top. I just have 4 folders, but I've always named mine after verbs too. Mine are make, learn, fix, and play. Those are the 4 I use. And so
what's in fix?
Just like settings.
Oh, okay.
I also have I don't know, but in my, if you're going to take this approach, gang, the trick is just use whatever your brain thinks, because it doesn't matter what somebody else does. It matters what you think. But I put meditation and workout in fix too, because I'm fixing myself the way I think of it, But, all the various, home, automation stuff and VPN and just so fixed for me is kind of like a utility, I guess, among other things.
A lot of that falls under nerd for me.
Yeah. I like
nerd is a verb.
Yeah. I like that you have one called nerd. That's my favorite one. You also have one called filter. And I guess that's all photo filters.
Yeah. Because there's all these things that they're not designed for photography.
Yeah.
They're designed for playing with images. So it goes under filter.
Yeah. See, I've got those under make, but because I only have 4 folders, there's a lot of swiping if I want to get to that stuff.
Right. Yeah, I don't like to have more than 3 pages within a folder.
Yeah, maybe what I should try is to put the Terpstra method on page 2 and the shortcuts on page 1, and just see which one I gravitate to more. But this is really nice. Now, I also see that you use Launch Center Pro.
Yeah.
And you've got that in your dock.
I use it mostly for the Force Touch. I have it set up so when I long press it or force press it, I can create a new draft in Drafts, a new document in OneWriter, a new task in OmniFocus, or a new event in Fantastical.
Yeah.
I can also use the quick actions there to launch various apps.
With OmniFocus, I have a Siri shortcut, which is just a choose from menu shortcut that has basically all of my OmniFocus scripts in it. Not only can I create a new task, like if I have a block idea, it opens up and fills out all the tags and everything for a blog idea. And all I have to do is type in the name of the idea and then it adds it. But then where it really gets meta is because I've got all these templates. Using OmniFocus, I've templated out most of the projects I make on MacSparky and Legal Side. So if someone wants me to make a new company for them, I hit the Omni Select, I call it Omni Select, and then I hit legal templates and then new company, and then it does it. But the whole thing is just going through these nested shortcuts to get to shortcuts.
Sure.
And, but all that's done from the home screen, which is nice. Do you use the NFC stuff with Launch Center Pro? That they've started supporting that?
I haven't yet.
Yeah.
I look forward to playing with it. It's exactly the kind of thing that my brain wants to play with.
Yeah.
I just haven't yet.
I just bought a bag off Amazon for like $10. It's like 10 NFC keychains, like keychain dongles. And I'm thinking about putting one on my wife's and doing something with shortcuts, but I haven't decided yet. Maybe. I
can see definite uses for it in like having one on your car dash when you get in the car.
Yeah, I feel like Launch Center Pro, we did a whole episode on it on automators, but Launch Center Pro and the new stuff with shortcuts, like automation on iOS is something that's becoming real. And honestly, you haven't done a lot of that, or at least you haven't published a lot of that.
Most of what I've done, I felt like other people have already done better. I'm late to the game there, but I'm really enjoying using everyone else's scripts on iOS. And I'm hoping that we find a happy medium between Mac and iOS.
Yeah.
Like, I don't want Mac to just get shortcuts. There's too much power in Mac automation that it would be crippling to just port shortcuts over. But if we could port shortcuts over and maintain some of the like scriptable actions of Automator, I could be a very happy camper. Automator never offered the ability to do if then or to do any kind of branching or logic looping. Shortcuts is great at that. Yeah. I mean, workflow is great at that. Shortcuts is great at that. If they brought that to Automator, I would be a happy camper.
Yeah, and I just don't think they will,
I think Automator is going to die.
Yeah.
I think that shortcuts will provide something on the Mac that can be equivalent. I mean, they're removing all of our scripting languages.
Yeah.
Or eventually will be, which means I don't think they're going to allow like a Perl script in an Automator action anymore or in a shortcut.
But with the way they've opened up the ability of app developers to create actions for Automator, which in essence, it's much more extensible. I mean, if you think about Automator, I've been thinking about a lot. I'm working on another field guide on it, but the only actions we have for OmniFocus are the one that the Automator team put in. But what if Omni Group could donate their own? Well, now they can with iOS 13. And then you start thinking about people who want to what if somebody made some sort of terminal app and then you could donate that and then suddenly Automator gets Shortcuts gets way more powerful.
Yeah, that could be cool.
I hope that you embrace it and start publishing on it because I think a lot of us would like to hear what Terpstra is doing with automation on iOS.
We'll see what happens.
This episode of the Mac Power Users is brought to you by Squarespace. Make your next move with Squarespace and enter offer code MPU at checkout to get 10% off your first purchase. For me and so many of the people around me, Squarespace has been the solution to putting anything on the internet. Whether you're making an online store, portfolio, blog, whatever, Squarespace can help you do that. Squarespace lets you easily create a website for your next idea with a unique domain, award-winning templates, and more. There's nothing to install, no patches to worry about, no upgrades needed. And that's why I love it so much. Because in the past, I used to use web services that required me to install patches. And if I didn't get it right, my site was vulnerable. And even then, sometimes the plugins didn't work. And it just seemed like I was spending all of my time trying to manage the website instead of create content for the website. And when I made the switch to Squarespace, that problem was just solved for me. Don't you like it when problems get solved? You don't have to worry about any of that stuff. Squarespace has got it all covered for you. They have award-winning 24/7 customer support if you need any help. They let you quickly and easily grab a unique domain name. And all of those award-winning templates are beautifully designed for you to show off your great ideas. And I'm living it, folks. I'm living the dream. I've got a Squarespace website for Max Sparky. I've got one for my legal practice. And they just work for me. I don't have to worry about making sure everything's up to date. I don't have to worry about getting hacked. Squarespace has got my back. They've been watching me. They've been watching out for me for many years, and I've never had a problem, and I love that. And Squarespace plans start at just $12 a month. But you can start a trial with no credit card required by going to squarespace.com/MPU. Don't forget that part, MPU. That's important to us. When you decide to sign up, use offer code MPU to get 10% off your first purchase of a website or domain and to show your support for the Mac Power users. Once again, that's squarespace.com/MPU and the code MPU to get 10% off your first purchase. We thank Squarespace for their support of this show and all of Relay FM. Squarespace, make your next move, make your next website. Brett, tell me about some of those apps you're using that none of us have ever heard of, and we should.
On iOS or on Mac?
Anyone, man. Wherever it's making you happy.
I'm super into the app Tower on Mac right now. It's a Git client. So I guess it's mostly for coders.
Yeah.
But it's for anyone who also gets, bogged down in command line stuff. It lets you do everything Git can do, including complex stuff like reflog operations and cherry-picked rebases, all of these things with a drag and drop interface, and it is super smooth and really nice. You can use it for writing projects. You can use it for graphics projects. Like, people should be using version control. Everyone should.
Yeah.
But it's hard to get into because a lot of it requires command line work, and not everyone wants to do that.
It looks like Tower kind of solves that for you.
Yeah. And I like the command line, and I can do most of it on the command line, and I still love using Tower.
Yeah. The idea of a repository, not just for code, but for text as well, it's just like the Kanban thing. It's something that starts out as a good solution for programmers, but can expand beyond. And I think we're at the very beginning of that.
Well, I think simpler version control, because Time Machine offers some version control. You can go back to a specific point in time.
Yeah, for one person.
Right. But you can't branch off. You can't incorporate someone else's changes. You can't have like a branch that diverges and tries a different approach to something and then rewind it back to another branch that had meanwhile split off.
Yeah.
That's the more advanced type of version control that I think a lot of people, if they had the tools to make it grokkable, that they would benefit from.
Yeah. And I think the collaborative writing is very close to being there with like Google Docs and some of the other, Quip and some of the other third-party services that are good at that. But the type of forking text and the benefits of that, I don't think that's out there yet. I don't think people have really realized that's even a possibility.
Yeah, there's going to have to be something that makes it just super accessible.
Yeah. Maybe that's what you do after nvUltra. You'd be uniquely qualified to make that. I think,
I've been getting better at putting my brain into the position of a normal person. Okay. And figuring out how to make things accessible to people who maybe don't have the tool set that I've acquired.
Oh, it's like, I know how to use the terminal. I've watched your videos on it. I've read books on it. I can get by, but I don't look forward to it. I don't want to and I don't do it enough to be conversant in it, you know?
And I wouldn't call you normal by any stretch of the imagination, but that is a very normal response to the command line.
Yeah.
So even for a power user.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's got to be something you do every day to make sense. And I, to me, it's always been about, I want to create stuff. I don't want to spend my time working on the tools to create stuff.
Right.
And so that's where I hit the speed bump with some of this stuff. For me, it's just, it's not that complicated. It's just really me for most of the stuff. And then I send it off to the editor and we get it back. And I've got an editor I trust, so I don't need to see, like a track changes kind of situation. But
right.
But wouldn't it be nice if there was something like that would be easy to implement and use plain text as opposed to like a word processing and all of the overhead that comes with that?
There was a really cool app for writers. I think it was called like Text Control or something. It's gone now, but it actually completely hid the Git subsystem that it used, but it used Git archives to automatically store revisions of any type of file you were working on.
Nice.
And would show you like diffs between versions, so you could see what changed and when, and let you rewind and merge different copies. And it did a great job of, you never had to know you were using Git. It gave you an interface specifically geared towards writing that gave you all this power without making you think about it.
I know that Steven is listening to this going like, I missed this week. And of course he went straight into text. Any other apps making you happy these days?
Most of the apps I use are for development.
Sure.
So they're not super accessible, but there's an app called CodeKit. And for web developers, I run into a lot of projects where I don't necessarily need to set up a whole Webpack grunt gulp situation, which are, if those words made sense to you, you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
CodeKit makes it super easy to set up workflows that will like automatically compile and compress your CSS, your HTML, lint, and compress your JavaScript and create your distribution folder and make it all part of a, much like Tower, puts a graphic interface on it. It's one of those apps that I think is just really well built to create an abstraction layer between the command line and the actual work. I appreciate apps that do that elegantly.
Yeah. Well, you know how hard that is.
I do.
So Brett Terpstra, nvUltra, soon.
Yes. And currently nvUltra.com will continue to be updated with the latest features and things as they are completely. We're adding some features right now that may or may not make it into final release, much the way Apple always has. But the resolved ones will be, you can kind of stay up to date there and add yourself to the mailing list, and we'll put out notifications now and then.
Yeah. And I will be following along as well. I'm going to definitely write about it at MacSparky when it comes out. We'll talk about it in the show. It's just such a great thing that you've been able to get this thing almost. You can see the goal line, so I think it's going to happen. I mean,
I know
I'm
it's going to happen.
So if anybody out there is listening and remembers using nvAlt and they haven't for a while, get yourself on the beta. Get the app when it gets released. It gives you exactly what you remember. Quick access to your text notes and the lightning ability to create and search them. I'm so happy for you, Brett, that you and Fletcher are working together. It's great. Chocolate and peanut butter.
It's a dream job.
Yeah. Well, I hope it's super successful because I want to see version 1.1 and version 2 and all the things you have up your sleeve. And if you, gang, if you're listening, you haven't been over to brettterpstra.com lately, you should. There's just always great stuff there. Like I recently had to set up a laptop. And I didn't have the Terpstra approved markdown services. You know what I'm talking about, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So Brett made these list of services. You can download them from his website. and you right click on any text and you can add your markdown whatever to it. I don't know how I get by without that, man.
SearchLink. Have you ever used SearchLink?
Yeah.
That actually ended up being a big part of my talk at MaxDoc because it's my favorite thing I've ever created.
I think people have kind of lost track of that in recent years about how much of this stuff you can automate, and like services. People aren't thinking about it as much, but with like the recent version of Mac OS, they've kind of added services to the Finder now.
Yeah, as quick actions.
Have you played with that much?
A little bit.
All right, I already started signing off, so some people may have hung up already, but they're going to lose out. Give me one that you're using as a quick action.
Well, I've converted like SearchLink into a quick action at this point.
Yeah, of course you have.
Yeah. So most of the ones I'm using are my own.
Yeah, nice. We didn't get anything on that with Catalina, but the fact that they put it at all in the Finder with the prior version, it's pretty amazing.
Yeah.
All right. Well, anyway, BrettTerpstra.com, gang. Are you active on Twitter these days? Where should people go to?
Yes, I am TTScoff, TTSCOFF on Twitter and everywhere. I am very consistent.
Yes. And so BrettTerpstra.com, markedapp.com, and nvUltra.com. Some great places to go to keep up with the stuff that Brett's making. Thanks so much to Brett for coming back on the show. Missed having you on. Glad to have you back, of course.
Thanks for having me.
We still talk about you and have to take our drinks. Thanks to our sponsors today, ButcherBox, 1Password, Omni, and Squarespace. And we'll see you all next week.